In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, scholars from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is the child who's been born King of the Jews?" In the time of Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea. Now, every single year that we get to this Sunday, we use the same passage. It's a good one. We're used to it. It's about journeys, about going from one place to another place, about changing lives. So not only is it suitable for Epiphany Sunday, it also makes sense as a metaphor for the changing year. But in many ways, the Magi seem to come from a different world. A world that neither we nor the Holy Family can conceive. You see, their world, the Magi's world, seems to be a more peaceful world. It's a safer world, perhaps one with more respect for academics. And they seem, in our minds at least, to have some wealth or means. We call them kings in the song that we sang today, even though there's no evidence to support that idea. And unlike the shepherds who were compelled in Luke by the angels, these scholars seem to be traveling on their own terms. They look up to the heavens, they see a magic star, they get their stuff together, they go exploring, they visit an actual king, and of course they find what they are looking for. Mission accomplished. The story of the Magi, or the scholars, or the wise men, or the three kings, although there's no evidence that they were kings, or that there were three of them, or that they were all male. Their story is really nice and tidy, isn't it? It's a set piece. It works well when you're moving your little guys, your little wise men across the mantelpiece on the way to the nativity scene. And that's probably why it's the last reading we bother with on Christmas Eve, before the story gets more complicated. And it does, as we know, get more complicated. As with many things in Matthew, this passage it feels literary. It's packed with symbolic meaning, but it also feels completely unrealistic. The fact is, we don't come from a place like that. Our universe doesn't work that way. We and the wise men have Herods and other hazards to deal with, but life here doesn't feel quite as orderly. Instead, we find ourselves, perhaps in spite of ourselves, intuitively understanding that other reading, the one I told you to look out for, attached to the story of the Magi, for today only. It's one that rarely disturbs our comfortable celebrations on December 24th. And frequently when we read it on that day or any other day, it feels like an appendix, a leftover part of the Christmas story. It's jarring, actually. It is a sudden reminder of the real world that we try so hard to escape during the holiday season. Now, after the Magi left, an angel appeared, says the Bible. An angel appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you, for Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." So Joseph got up. He took the child and his mother by night and went to Egypt, remaining there until the death of Herod. This story we understand because we watch the news. Stories of people fleeing for their lives do sound like the world we live in. Because you see, history did not wait for us during the holiday break, did it? Politicians did not wait for us. Nations did not wait for us. The refugee crisis in Syria and elsewhere did not wait for us. Religious and racial discrimination at home and abroad did not wait for us either. The problems we left way back in December are still here. Now today, Today we welcome Winna into a strong, supportive family and a community that is stable and safe. And perhaps more than in years before, we recognize what a blessing that is. And we recognize what a blessing it is for us to be able to live in that same community. However, we'd have to be some pretty serious hermits not to see that our situation isn't afforded to everyone. So we have an obligation. In fact, we are called. We are called to find ways to help and serve those who do not yet have the same benefits we have in our lives. You see, the family at the center of our story today, and in fact at the center of the story that we've been telling each other for a month, is fleeing from one bad situation into another. Egypt is to them, at the very least, an unknown wilderness. They do not know if they will be welcomed. They do not know if they will survive. They do not know what the reaction will be to their very different faith, their minority Jewish faith. What the reaction will be to what they know must seem to some Egyptians as a foreign, unwelcome, even subversive culture. But they also know that life has become dangerous for them where they are, and they keep on going. In fact, what we call the Holy Family is in the process of fleeing from a place where they are already immigrants. Nazareth is far away. Bethlehem has already proven to be, let's face it, less than ideal. And so they continue to run. And they run because the power of a government that is not their own. Now, maybe we see a bit of ourselves in Joseph and Mary and in Jesus' flight to Egypt. Perhaps not in as literal a sense as some folks, like the Syrian refugees. But we too, more often than not, feel like we are running away from something rather than toward a desired destination. And when we are in touch with our darkest fears, we understand on some level their isolation and suffering, because we too want to preserve ourselves, our lives, and our sanity. We want to be where we feel safe, where we feel loved. And so if we are, in some small way, able to connect with the plight of displaced people, like Jesus and his parents, then we must in some way ask ourselves what it is that we can do to help. What can we do to help? Now, as a whole, as a nation, it is important for us to remember that to somebody, to the displaced people of today, we, the citizens of the dominant culture of North America and Europe, represent what Egypt was to Mary and Joseph. A place in a society holding both threat and promise. So as individuals, if we are to take this story that we are talking about today seriously, we need to ask ourselves what sort of welcome we want today's holy families to receive. And we need to look toward places in our society where we haven't extended as warm a welcome as we could. Now, I don't have a lot of answers. This is the part where I'd put answers. I'm in the process of figuring out what I can do. And given my line of work, though, there are some things that are obvious. And many of you are, in fact, aware of the fact that the local clergy have been working hard lately to offer our support to the Islamic community, holding meetings and providing letters of support. And those of you who came to church last week had the chance to listen to Zandra Minter, a convert to Islam, who talked about the ways that we can create, in her words, fruitful dialogue across faiths during the holiday season. But what you all do in this situation comes from who you are. It comes from your strengths whatever they may be. And what we do together as a congregation, as a community, what we do together takes all of us to challenge and be challenged, to pray, to meditate, or reflect. So let us now take a moment in silence before communion to consider the year ahead and how we can make it a time of radical welcome and sacred openness.